doing Raw or we're doing some along those lines, it's probably going to be a little bit difficult for people to get their points across because of so many people being around trying to watch the show. The show gets in the way. So with this, we've got an opportunity to not have to worry about a show, not have to worry about paying attention to what's happening on TV. We can literally just jump into the chat. We can talk. And the other thing as well, which I really like, and I didn't think about this until earlier in the day, but it allows me to ask you guys questions and get feedback from you guys, which I can then use in like a video later in the week. So I'm very interested. If you haven't already, go and make your voice heard on that form. You can see a link to that form where you can actually pick multiple choice answers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the results of that. I'm going to put it into a little short video and I'll put that out. I think it could be really interesting to see what the community kind of is leaning towards. I mean, we do little polls during the streams, but we don't really do anything with them other than just kind of what we like, you know, people that are with us can see. Like we don't put it anywhere else. I don't put it in videos or anything. But this form, I can do that. I can put it into a video, put it out there so that everyone can see it. So I'm kind of excited by that. I think that could be something really useful that we do each week. And the other thing that's going to be really useful as well is we can actually go down the shows. We can talk about the latest news, but more than that, we can talk about the week ahead. So maybe eventually, once we've done this a little bit of time, I'll have some jingles or something like the week ahead, or like a jingle for Raw and a jingle for NXT or something along those lines. I'm not sure, but we can definitely look to break the week down. And explore Raw, explore NXT, explore SmackDown. I've got, to be honest, a little bit for Raw. I've got loads for NXT. NXT is rammed full of stuff. And then a little bit for SmackDown coming up next week. So I'll jump into the chat, say hello to Logan, and then we'll start with blasting down the preview, and then we can get into the chat, which is the whole reason as to why we're here. As I said, if you haven't gone into that form and made your voice heard, go and definitely do that. So Logan said, Daze, I missed the stream yesterday, but I am here today. Logan, shout out to you. Yeah, it was a good stream last night. We did UFC. Big shock result in the main event. I know there's going to be some people out there that aren't UFC fans, but a big shock result last night, and it really did make that show kind of even more noteworthy. It made it even more worth doing. It was worth doing anyway. It was a big show, but brand new middleweight champion in the UFC. So yeah, it was a good one, but obviously we are looking ahead and we are looking towards Raw. So let's talk about Raw. On Raw, we've got the poll up already. We've got the Women's World Championship match. So we've got Rhea Ripley taking on Raquel Rodriguez. This is for the Women's World Championship. This poll has been up for about 45 minutes. It's had over 100 votes already. And who is going to leave as the Women's World Champion? Obviously, at the moment, it's Rhea. And so it looks like a lot of you are thinking it's going to stay that way. Rhea, 72% so far. Raquel, 28%. So we'll keep an eye on that throughout the stream. We're going to be here for about an hour. That's what we're looking for, about an hour. I'm not going to keep you guys hostage on a Sunday night, but we are looking about an hour. So we'll keep an eye on that, but at the moment, Rhea very much in the lead. The other things that we've got, we know that we've got Cody. He's going to be making an appearance on Raw. We still don't know what's next for Cody. Like, feel free to put your thoughts in as to what you think is next for Cody. That hasn't really shown itself for me yet. So going to wait and see there. And of course, the big one is the Gunther Intercontinental title celebration. I think this is so exciting. History has been made because of all the stuff that's been going on in wrestling. We haven't really spoken about the fact that he's done it. I mean, it got done, I think, on Thursday, Friday. He is now the longest reigning Intercontinental champion. No one is going to be taking that away from him unless someone beats it, of course, but they've got to get the belt off him first. And I honestly don't know. If you think the last time that it was beaten was like the late 80s, I mean, you are going back a good, I don't know, 30 plus years. I mean, in like, you know, in 30 plus years, where are we all going to be? So it's one of those that some of us may never see I'm talking about myself here, may never see that record get beaten again. So it is big. It's absolutely huge. So Gunther is the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion. We're going to be celebrating that fact on Raw. I think there'll be a challenger step up. I think there's a chance that it could be Chad Gable. Again, like, Chad to me feels like the one, but again, another good question for you guys is, who do you think is the one? Do you think that Chad has fallen short and that is it? Like, that's it. Well done. You had a good try, but that's it. Is that it for Chad's? Or do you think that we are going to see Chad get one more shot, one more try? You know, is he going to get that one final go? Because I think you could go either way here. I think that you could give Chad that one final go, or you could move on to someone else. I mean, it's got to be someone soon, because as we said, you can't afford for this record to go too long, because it's got to be beaten in the future. It's got to be beaten in the future. So you can't afford for this thing to go on and on and on. So I know there's people, myself included, that would love for it to be Dragunov, but I can't see Dragunov doing it unless he's going to be a shock appearance on the main roster and he's just going to win. Like, he would have to win the title on day one of him being on the main roster. And I don't think he's coming to the main roster. It feels like we're building him for the NXT title. So I'd love for it to be Dragunov, but I don't think time-wise that's going to work. But if it's not Chad, who is it? If it's not Chad, who is it? So that's going to be a really interesting segment tomorrow, because I think we should find out during that segment who that next challenge is. And it could be Chad. It could be Chad. Before we move on, I want to jump into the chat because we've spoken a lot there about a few different things. Raquel, Rhea, what's next for Cody? Who could be facing Gunther? I've asked you guys a few questions to kind of mull over and chew over. So feel free to be putting them in. I don't want to be jumping to NXT just yet, but once we've kind of gone through a little bit of Raw, and that's all I've got for Raw, in all fairness. I went through NXT's Twitter account, and I couldn't see anything on there in regards to any other matches that had been made or announced. So at the moment, it looks like that's it for Raw. WrestleLandy said Cody traded to SmackDown. Do you think that's what Cody's? And it, like, I don't think they said it was an announcement. It just said Cody was going to be on Raw. So do you think that's what he's going to do? He's going to come out and announce that he's going to SmackDown, like it's been agreed over the weekend type situation? Because that makes sense. It makes sense. And I could definitely see that going that way. I think Cody is the firm favorite to be going over to SmackDown. I think he is the firm favorite to be going over. But I don't know quite when we're doing it. I don't know how long we're going to stretch it out for. I would imagine we're going to move quite quickly on it because, of course, Jay has already gone to Raw. So that means that SmackDown is already a person down. So, yeah, Cody going in the other direction, you could be right. That could be that segment. Dean said, do you think anyone else can beat him? Well, I mean, anyone can beat him in regards to if WWE and Triple H want that person to be that person, they can be that person. So, you know, Johnny Gargano can come back. We haven't seen him for a while, but he can challenge Gunther for a title match and then beat him first time of trying, right? Tommaso Ciampa could be that person first time of trying. Like, you know, there's plenty of people out there that I think have the potential to do it. I mean, Sami Zayn doesn't have the tag titles now. You know, could it be a case that Sami Zayn steps up, challenges Gunther? I mean, Sami against Gunther, one-on-one. I mean, like, we all know how great a wrestler Sami Zayn is. It's just that he doesn't always get the opportunity. Like, if you look back on how many singles matches at pay-per-views Sami has had in recent years, it's not great reading, right? He's not been used in that sort of position. So him going one-on-one with Gunther for a title opportunity, hopefully at the next pay-per-view, where I think Gunther should lose it. I mean, I feel if Gunther's going to lose it, it needs to be on a big stage. It needs to be on a big platform. I would have no problem with that being Sami. I'd have no problem with it being Kevin. I understand that, like, this is a great opportunity to build someone, and maybe someone that could really benefit. But I sort of think that with Sami in particular, he was red hot in the bloodline, and that has really settled down. That has really cooled down. You could make the argument of Jey Uso. I mean, Jey is just now branching out on his own. So Jey is over, and everyone knows Jey, and he's super popular, but he hasn't particularly done much as a singles wrestler. So him getting the Intercontinental Championship, being the one to beat Gunther, I can see that why you would do that. It's not the way I would go. I think that Jey could probably just do with like a feud first, and you know, then have a look at maybe going after like a mid-card belt. Him just coming over, going straight after Gunther, picking up the win. I mean, it would solidify his singles run. It would solidify his singles run. But I just think there's so many people that are waiting to get going. You know, like, I know it won't be this person, but like Karrion Kross. Karrion Kross has just been spinning his wheels, not really doing a great deal. He needs a moment like this. Karrion, to legitify Karrion, so that Karrion is kind of viewed differently. He could do with this victory. Obviously, it won't be because he's a heel, and I don't even know what brand is on, but you get my point. Like, Johnny Gargano could do with it to really get started. Tommaso Ciampa could do with it to really get started. Karrion Kross could do with it to really get started. It'd be a great way to bring up like a babyface like Ilya Dragunov if Dragunov was ready. I feel like we're drowning in options. I don't think we're struggling for options. It's just who is going to be the one? Who's the one they're going to invest in? Who's the one that they're going to say, yeah, that's the direction that we want to go? If they are trying to do Cody and Roman at WrestleMania 40, said George Vlogs, they need to get Cody in a good rivalry with a tough opponent. And right now, Cody ain't doing anything really. It's a fair point. It's a fair point. Godfather's Toe said, Days, happy Sunday, buds. I'm drunk off Jesus. Let's go. Who is the best ref of all time? Dangerous Danny Davis is on my list. I believe LA Knight will be the next for Gunther. R.I.P. my beehole after Beefaroonie. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know why, but I always think of like Mike Chioda, and I genuinely don't know why. Don't know why. What I love about the refs is that they largely just stay out the way. I'm really not a fan of the Aubrey Edwards approach to refereeing, where, you know, there's a lot of gesticulating and, you know, finger pointing and whatever. For me, like a referee, you shouldn't even notice them, should be in the background. I mean, you can name names of like a Mike Chioda or an Earl Hebner or a Tim White or, you know, but what made them any difference from each other? What made them any different? To be honest, they all just get in there, do a job. You know, Jessica Carr, I think, does a great job. She just gets in there, does the job. And that's all you need to do, really. So referee-wise, I don't know. I always think Mike Chioda, because I've got a feeling that he was one of the longest serving, and I think he might have been like head of the refs, king of the referees. They do tend to have like someone that kind of is like lead referee, if you will, that kind of advises and oversees the other referees. And I'm sure Mike Chioda played that part and was in that position for a long time. So that would kind of mean that he was overseeing not just his own performance, but the performances of others. So for me, that's why I'd probably look in that direction. Earl Hebner might have done it for a while as well. I genuinely don't. That's a side of it I genuinely don't know. Genuinely don't know as to like who was in those kind of positions of power within like the referee union. But as we said, you know, actual in-ring performance, I don't think there's much to separate them, to be honest. I don't think there's much to separate them. The only thing I can say is that when I see something like Aubrey or something where you've got a ref that's really wanting to be in the spotlight, really wants to be part of, you know, the conversation, that to me is just, that's not necessary. We're not looking to build up the referees. Like the refs are in there to, you know, officiate. It's a little bit like a boxing referee, you know? Like you've got like these two world champions, or you've got a world champ, someone trying to take the title off them. And then, like, the referee is just a complete afterthought. Like, at no point have I watched boxing and thought, oh, I wish the ref would do a bit more. Like, all you do is judge the ref's performance, don't you? That's all you tend to do with a ref. A bit like that low blow situation with Dubois and Usyk. That's what people were talking about. They weren't saying, like, oh, didn't really see much of the ref. Oh. So, each to their own, but I don't think there's much to separate them, to be honest. Trey Gaiman said it could be The Miz only because he is feuding with LA Knight right now. Roman should beat Gunther. It's about time he started collecting all the belts, said Scottish Nightmare. William said, I want a completely unlikely champion winning by accident and retaining by accident. A terrible wrestler that seems to somehow just win. Anna said, give me a DIY comeback to face a surprise team in AOP. That would be sick, actually. That would be sick. Maybe that would rule out like your Johnnies and your Tommasos, because if we got a DIY reunion, that would be really good. That would be really, really good. I mean, they were such an incredible team. And what I love about it as well is that you can just imagine them two like doing really well. Candice, Indy, being backstage, like it sort of feeds into some other wrestlers as well. Those two being together, I don't think it's just them. I think that would be a boost to Candice and Indy, because then you would start to do some backstage segments. And we know that if you're going to have a backstage segment with Johnny, it's going to have Candice involved. And I'd imagine if Candice is involved, Indy will be involved. This could also bring in Dexter Loomis. I like the idea of Tommaso being uncertain of Dexter. And then maybe you've got a little like Sammy Jey Uso type situation there. I don't know. I think that there's just opens it up, man. Really opens it up. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that, Anna. I'm a big fan of that. Right, let's get back into the chat. Let's scroll down. Did you hear about Matt Riddle? Said Kieran. I did, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I just don't know what's going on with Matt Riddle. I don't know. I mean, he just seems to have like a lot of problems in his life. I mean, don't forget, it was only late last year that he was removed from TV so that he could go to rehab, and then it meant that we didn't see him for the majority of this year. So you know, he had like a lot of issues kind of outside, and then you just don't hear, do you, of like any kind of, I don't know. I don't feel like I hear about like other wrestlers' personal lives as much as I hear about Matt Riddle's. Like, you're always hearing about his wife and his kids and allegations and rehab, and it just feels like there's a lot of drama that tends to follow him around. So for those that haven't heard, in regards to Riddle, the latest one is that he's saying that he was sexually assaulted, and I'm not disbelieving him. You know, if he's saying it, then I'd be here to listen to it. But it is another example of just something else now that's happened outside of the ring with Matt Riddle. But as I said, I think this is the kind of thing that, you know, when you're talking about sexual assault, you know, if it doesn't matter if it's a guy or a girl, like, you got to listen, you got to take it serious. So I ain't not taking it serious. But I'm just making the observation. We tend to hear a lot of A lot of stuff that's happened outside the ring with Matt Riddle. I'm trying to find the tweet. He put like a post up, which he's now deleted as well. So he put up this post, which I think now has been deleted. But I'm trying to... Oh, here it is. It says, right, nothing like being sexually assaulted by an officer and harassed at the JFK airport. No means no. And just because I'm nice, it doesn't mean yes. A-hole. I mean, that whole thing just seems strange to me. Like, if a police officer comes up to you, how do you find yourself getting into some sort of sexual harassment? In my mind, it's security searches. In my mind, I can't imagine what else. How else would you find yourself in a situation with a police officer where you're being sexually assaulted? I can only think it's like a pat down, you've set the alarm off or something. But then how does the no means no part come into play? Do you know what I mean? Like, how does that come into play? If you go through one of those barriers and you set it off and you stand there, put your arms out, and they go, can I check you? And you go, no. Well, then, okay, well, you ain't getting on the flight. So, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of questions around this as to what was the incident? How did it come about? What did he actually do? So, nothing like being sexually assaulted by an officer, and harassed at JFK Airport. No means no. And just because I'm nice, it doesn't mean yes, a-hole. Don't know their Twitter or Instagram handles, but I took pictures. Normally, I'm like, whatever. What does this mean? Normally, I'm like, have you been in this situation before? Normally, I'm like, whatever, but today was really weird and uncomfortable. They made a point of making me feel small and useless. Definitely one of the most uncomfortable travel days I've ever had. Thanks, NYC. You're so progressive and accepting. I gotta be honest. It's so hard for me to decode this. I cannot even begin to get my head around it. I cannot even begin to know how I'm meant to feel about it or what I'm meant to take from it. I mean, I have sympathy for him because clearly he's had a horrific experience. So I definitely have got sympathy. And as I said, it doesn't matter if it's a guy or if it's a girl. It shouldn't make any difference whatsoever. If he's saying that he was sexually assaulted by an officer, that needs to be investigated, needs to be looked into. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions. You can't say there's not questions that come out of it. You know, you can't say that that you don't. I can't be the only one that comes away from it going, what? 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 That's my response. What? I don't understand. There's a lot of it I just don't understand. No means no. That doesn't mean, just because I'm nice, it doesn't mean yes. I'm normally like whatever, but today was weird. They made me feel small and useless. So progressive. But as we said, apparently now it's been deleted. It said, as documented by Cultaholic, the WWE superstar shared a photo of the alleged abuser. I mean, this is pretty serious. He's accused someone of sexual assault and then put a picture up of him on social media. Like, this is pretty serious for the person in the picture, you know? This might not be a situation that goes away. It remains to be seen how the situation will be handled moving forward, but at the time of writing, there haven't been any more updates. WWE has yet to make a comment on the accusation made against the police officer by Riddle. It says Riddle has been involved in sexual misconduct scandals in the past. In 2018, amid the Speaking Out movement, an independent wrestler, Candy Cartwright, accused him of sexually assaulting her. Riddle denied the sexual assault allegation, but he did admit to having an affair with her. Oh, a lot to unpack, isn't there? A lot to unpack with that. I did see that earlier, and I was like, I just don't know, man. I just don't know. There's so much about that I just don't know. I don't believe him, but facts he claims it was an officer at JXK seems unlikely. Also, the fact he deleted it makes me believe it less, said Jake Holden. Well, he put a picture up of a police officer. I have seen the picture, but I have not... I've seen the picture, but I did not study it. I mean, I didn't like look to see, was they in a room, you know, anything along those lines. So I don't quite know, you know, did he try to go through and there was something in his bag and he got took to a room? Could it be that? You know, come with me, sir, you know? And then something's gone down in that room. If so, there's got to be cameras in that room. And if so, I'd imagine there'll be an investigation. And if there's an investigation and there's cameras and there's a high profile person involved, it'll leak. Right? I'm pretty sure it'll leak. So we might not have to sit and try and decode it or work it out because the truth might just come out or the footage might come out anyway. Space Coast had said, Riddle is in trouble, to be honest. It's getting to a point where a release could happen. TSA say he was heavily intoxicated. That's interesting. I hadn't heard about that. He was heavily intoxicated. Miss Clown said, it sounds like he needs a break. Law enforcement sources say that Port Authority officers got a call for a disorderly person who was deplanning. Well, I don't know what that is. What's that? Who was deplanning. And they met him at a terminal. It turned out it was Riddle. But the cop is going to sue the ish out of him, said Kid Gloves. Riddle's head is pickled. It's like saying, did you hear about Matt Riddle? Okay, we answered that one. Have you heard about Big E? No, haven't heard anything about Big E. Nothing. I mean, the only thing was a little while ago, there was reports that he had been told not to kind of come back, you know, by a few doctors. Don't know that it was all doctors, but by a few doctors. Apparently he'd been advised, like, it's probably not best that you return, so... Don't know. Not obviously not good news, unfortunately, in that regard. Deplaning is when you leave the plane. Oh, is that all it is? Just deplaning. Is that all it is? Okay. I've never heard that before. Crazy Ginger, Jake Holden said, exactly. Either way, he felt uncomfortable. I think there's a chance he could be overreacting from what it is. Big Time said, I get WWE want to squeeze every last juice out of the bloodline. I'm cool with it. But like everyone, we want things to progress. What are the possible direction could they go in whilst keeping it fresh? So what are the directions could they go in whilst keeping it fresh? To be honest, you could just start a feud. I mean, there's a lot of internal focus. Like you could really start an external focus. There could be another group that comes along that all of a sudden means that all the, you know, to be honest, they've been so dominant. And don't forget when the infighting was happening, like they had the tag belts, Roman had both of his belts. You know, they were flying high, and then obviously it's the cracks with Sammy that separated things. And then like Jay was really uncertain. Then that led ultimately the Usos coming out because of like, you know, Roman was not happy that the Sammy issue hadn't been dealt with. You know, they were meant to deal with Sammy and Kevin at WrestleMania. That was an embarrassment that they didn't to the family. Then, of course, it would be Roman and Solo that would try and go after those tag titles instead. That was an embarrassment to the Usos. So it's kind of all kind of fallen apart out of Sammy and the way Sammy was being treated. That's then like spilled into kind of where we are now. So for the longest time, there's been a real focus for months and months and months and months and months internally. We've looked within the bloodline. We could easily look externally, and we could look at some really good challenges for Roman, some people that could really step up. Look at how great Seth and Shinsuke has been. So Shinsuke's come along, and the focus there has been on Shinsuke kind of saying, I know what your weakness is. I know about your back, blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm not saying that you would say that exact story, but, you know, you build up someone who maybe hasn't had many opportunities, but all of a sudden they feel quite fresh and they feel quite interesting. And I was really on board Shinsuke winning. Still am. Maybe we can find someone like that that's fresh and interesting and different to face Roman, which will pass a little bit of time away. And maybe as that time is being passed, you know, Jimmy is then, his loyalty is tested and he comes through. He comes through, and that's enough for Roman to be like, yep, he can come back in with us. I you know, his bloods. He stood by me before. I trust he'll stand by me now. And maybe that will be tested, and maybe that will be how Jimmy is kind of, you know, accepted back in again. But also you can use these external stories as a way of continuing to just tease that drama between Solo and Roman. You can continue to tease that. You can continue to bring in Jimmy. Obviously, ultimately, it can lead somewhere, but at least the majority of promos and focus for Bloodline segments isn't going to be an internal one so much anymore. It's going to be about an opponent for Roman, or because there's only 3 of them now, all of a sudden you're opening it up for a big war against another faction, you know? We didn't really have any factions that were big enough to go up against Bloodline. Certainly not when Sammy was in as well. We had Solo, we had Roman, we had Sammy, we had the Usos, we had 5. You know, I mean, there just wasn't any groups out there that had those numbers. There was no group that could hang with the Bloodline. All of a sudden now, Solo, Jimmy, Roman, wow. I mean, we've got plenty of teams that can deal with that. I mean, you could do like a war against the LWO. Might not be the most exciting thing in the world, but in all fairness, you know, we are trying to build Santos Escobar. And I think, you know, there's potential. You could do Santos and his 2 minions just going into a little feud with Roman, Solo, and Jimmy. That you know, that'll kill, that spin your wheels. You know, it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but certainly we could do something with it. We've got to do something with the LWO. Of course, the ultimate one would be Bobby and the Street Profits. That's the one. That's the one that probably you really do lick your lips at. Bobby and the Street Profits against Roman, Jimmy, and Solo. Bloodline versus Hurt Business. Hurt Profits, whatever you want to call them, Street Business, like those guys against Bloodline, like that's pretty juicy, man. That's pretty juicy. So you can either go for like individual targets, you can go for like a faction target, but I think we need to start looking external rather than internal. We've been doing that all year. Ashley said, when is he ever not intoxicated? Every time I see him, he looks more stoned than Jeff Hardy at Victory Roads. Early in the Bloodline story, we got Roman more often than we do now, said Kieran. Dinesh said CM Punk could return at Survivor Series in Chicago as a surprise member at War Games or Raw versus SmackDown, maybe. Big Time said, I'm thinking Paul Heyman turning on Roman or vice versa. Maybe Rock Roman. Jimmy will build to Mania. I do wonder when the story will finally conclude. Well, I think the bulk of it will conclude when Roman's ready to go. I think that I can see it really falling apart around 40. I could see Roman losing the title at 40. And that same night being the night where Solo turns on Roman. Solo turns on Roman, maybe afterwards, or maybe mid-match, abandons him, walks away, something like that. I don't think if Cody's going to beat Roman, I really don't think that it should be because of something. Like, I don't want Solo to get in the ring, Samoan spike Roman, and then Cody wins. Because there'll be plenty of people saying that Cody only won it because of Solo turning. So for me, if Cody's going to get it, he needs to earn it. So I would much rather Solo either turn after, which would be difficult because after we will be celebrating Cody winning the title. So, you know, he might have to do it on the SmackDown after. It might not be immediately after. It might have to be the SmackDown after. Or he does it earlier in the match, but walks away, doesn't actually physically get involved. Or does Samoan spike Roman, but Roman recovers and Cody still goes on to win, or something along those lines. I think that I could see Roman losing his titles, being Samoan spiked, and going away for a good while. And that'll be the end of this run. And then eventually he'll come back and I think work a match, a program with Solo, which would be pretty fun, actually. That would be pretty fun. I mean, if he goes away and does some films and movies after WrestleMania and then comes back and does like a match with Solo at SummerSlam 2024. So he loses the titles at WrestleMania and then does a program with Solo. Just, rough ballpark. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking at, thinking about. But whether it does play out that way, I'm not sure. But that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm looking at. My 3-year-old nephew was playing with old WWF LJN toys. Very cool. Love those. I mean, they're just big and rubber and they don't have any articulation. But if you're a kid, you do not need articulation. I mean, sometimes they're a little bit tricky to stand up, to be honest. But really, other than that, just like colliding them into each other, jumping off the ropes, like slingshotting them off the ropes, whatever. I mean, they were big. They looked quite good as well. A lot of them did look mainly like in the later years. Like there's an early Andre that looks pretty rubbish. But in the later years, they look pretty good, actually. And because they're quite big as well. I mean, there's a good, do you know what I mean? God only knows how much they were costing to ship around the world, these quite heavy rubber figures. But yeah, LJNs, man. Got a lot of love for those. Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns at Survivor Series will be fire if it happens, said Dinesh. AJG said, is this a new thing for Sunday? Yeah. So it is the new thing for Sunday. It's going to be about an hour, right? Whereby we just come in. I try and speak to as many people as can, get to as many thoughts and theories as we can. It allows me to ask you guys some questions for a video, which there is a link. It's at the top. So you can actually click on that and then get in your responses. I can see we've had, I think it's around about 20 responses at the moment. So if you, at the top of the page, if you just click on the link, you can then vote for like some multiple choice questions. I'm just going to get that data, right? Not your data. I don't collect your data. I'm not interested in your data. I'm interested in your responses. I'm going to take that and put it in a video. I think we could definitely look to do that every week. And the other thing is obviously speak to you guys and go through your thoughts and questions. And it just gives us another opportunity to do that. And it gives us an opportunity to break the week down as to what's happening on each of the shows. So it kind of serves quite an interesting purpose. Obviously, we can flesh it out a bit more, structure it a bit more as we continue to do them. But just gives you a rough idea as to what we're looking to do. So we've touched on Raw. We need to get to NXT and SmackDown. So Raw, Rhea versus Raquel for the Women's World Championship. Cody's going to be on the show. And obviously Gunther title celebration. That could be a lot of fun because we may find out who is going to step up to Gunther next. Down in NXT, Tiffany Stratton versus Becky Lynch for the NXT Women's Championship. We've got a big title match on Tuesday. NXT is fire this week, man. It is fire. So that is huge. So Tiffany versus Becky, NXT Women's title match. In fact, what we can do is Rhea has definitely won our poll. We might as well start our next poll. Nearly 300 votes, you know. Who leaves? I've got a feeling this one's going to be closer. NXT Women's Champion. So is Becky going to be able to do it? Or maybe she doesn't and we delay it and we build towards like No Mercy, is it? We build towards... Is she really going to win this Women's Championship, NXT Women's Championship, on a Tuesday night show, NXT? Or are we going to build it up for the pay-per-view? Or maybe she does win it and then loses it back at the next No Mercy, you know? So she carries it for just a very short time. Don't know. This is going to be an interesting poll. Tiffany versus Becky, NXT Women's title on the line this Tuesday. As well as that, we got Lyra Valkyria against Dana Brooke. You might remember they argued backstage the other week. We've got the Creed brothers taking on Inofi and Blades. You might remember that they invited all the teams round. I don't quite know why Inofi and Blades are the ones they're getting into a match with, but that's how it's fallen. We've got Nathan Frazier against Akira Tozawa. That is the Global Heritage Invitational. We've also got Ilya versus Wesley. Winner is going to be able to go on and face Carmelo. That's a big match. Tyler Bate versus Axiom in the Global Heritage Invitational. And then we've got Briggs, Jensen, and Miles. Miles, who we have been seeing getting mistreated. He is going to be teaming up with Briggs and Jensen, taking on Charlie Dempsey, Drew Gulak, and Damon Kemp. So Miles has been working with Dempsey, Gulak, and Kemp, and he has now, I don't know if he has broken away from them or if this is just like his debut and he's still with them and he wants to prove himself. This just got announced on social media, so quite looking forward to that one. So a lot to unpack there. Hopefully Ilya beats Wesley, because I'd love to see Ilya versus Carmelo, unless Ilya is going to lose and then go to the main roster, but that's probably me just hoping, to be honest. And as we said, the big thing there is the NXT women's title match. Might as well just throw in SmackDown as well, because there isn't loads for SmackDown this week. Cena is going to be on the Grayson Waller effect. I really think this is leading to LA Knight and John Cena versus Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. John Cena being in a tag team or a tag match makes a lot of sense, because, you know, he's only just got back. I don't think he's really ready to do singles matches. You know, you've got to work up your fitness. You've got to work up get rid of the ring rust. So being in a tag team, just like he was at the end of last year, when it was him and Kevin Owens against Sammy and Roman, you know, tag teams, they just protect you a little bit more. You don't have to do as much in those matches. And imagine him partnering LA Knight. Like, LA Knight is super over. John Cena being his partner, that is a big moment for LA Knight. We know that Grayson and Austin are a team at the moment. So, and we know that LA Knight had a match just on Friday against Austin Theory. And we know that Grayson Waller was trying to cheat and get involved. Like, I can totally see that build into a tag match. Totally see that build into a tag match. So I think LA Knight, John Cena against Grayson Waller, Austin Theory, feeling really good. We're heading in that direction. Don't know if we find that out on Friday. Haven't seen any rumors on it. It might not go that way, but I'm feeling good about it. We also have LA against The Miz. So could it be potentially that an upset Austin Theory, upset at losing the match, could get involved there? Maybe The Miz gets the win. LA then has to focus on Austin Theory instead. And maybe The Miz then gets a victory and he can go back to Raw and he's got something to brag about. Have to wait and see. And obviously the OC as well. I think that's really interesting, because the OC, I mean, they've been quite close, but now it feels like they're kind of falling apart a little bit. There's a lot of arguing and things that are happening within the OC. So I'm very interested to see what we're going to do with AJ and the OC. Are they going to, you know, click together and step up together? And is this going to be something that's going to really be quite juicy going forward? Or are we looking at the start of a breakup? Could we actually be looking at this kind of faction kind of going their separate ways? Can't quite read as to what we're doing with that. I feel like they're probably going to get closer and more united, and they're going to refresh them rather than split them up. But could go either way on that one, couldn't it? Could go either way on that one. So that's it for NXT and SmackDown. So we can jump into the chat. Anything you want to talk about? Raw, NXT, SmackDown, latest news. If you want to talk about Gunther, I mean, we can talk about Riddle, but I don't think there's much more that needs to be said there, to be honest. Because I've got more questions than answers on that one. So yeah, it's one that we can chuck around. Big Time said it feels like Tiffany is getting her footing in as a champion a win over Becky could do her wonders. Well, let's have a little look, shall we? Because we have got 77 votes. Who's going to leave as NXT Women's Champion? 67% of you are saying it's Becky. 67% are saying Becky. So at the moment, we're looking at like 2/3 think that it'll be Becky, 1/3 think that it'll be Tiffany. So feel free to keep your votes coming in on that one. Kieran said, if Rhea is still champion by WrestleMania 40, who will she face? I say Becky. If Rhea is still champion by WrestleMania 40, who will she face? I think Becky is a perfectly acceptable opponent. Absolutely. What brand are they on? They're both on the same brand. I don't think there's going to be any other movement. It's going to need to be a big name, isn't it? It's going to need to be a big name. And I think isn't Bianca and Asuka and Charlotte and where's Bailey? Bailey. I think they're all over on SmackDown. I think there's a lot of the big names are actually on SmackDown, which means there's not that many big names for Rhea to face. So, yeah, I would think it would be a big name unless they were going to, like, hold off on Raquel being, like, the winner. Like, obviously, we've got Raquel and Rhea tomorrow on Raw. So, if they're going to hold off on that and they're actually going to do that match... they're going to do that match at WrestleMania instead, then I would probably lean towards it, obviously being Rhea and Raquel. But if not, then I think Becky definitely stands a chance. Aesthetic Delta said, what do we have in store for Chad Gable after his Gunther feud? Well, I don't know if we're done with the Gunther feud. That was a question we asked earlier. Like, are we going to see... Because Chad got real close... But he did also have his opportunity. It's hard for us to campaign for him to get another rematch because he had his shot and it was fair. It was all above boards and he fell short. So if he thinks that he's got it in him and he knows how to beat Gunther and he really wants that one more chance, I could see them doing that. And if that's what he's going to say, I think he wins. I think he wins. I think that Gunther now... We, to be honest, we've only been waiting for this record. Now the record's broken. That's it. So if it's not going to be this, then I really don't know, because do you go back to the tag division? You know? Because Otis is just a flipping spare wheel, isn't he? Like, poor Otis and Maxine, they're just like standing around in the background. We came out of a feud with Viking Raiders, and now we've gone into, like, Chad Gable as a solo star. So I think that we need to, if Chad's done with Gunther, I think we need to really have a look at these guys now, maybe stepping up to go for those tag titles, really being back in that conversation. It's going to be hard because obviously Judgment Day have only just won them, but maybe Alpha Academy would have to get into like a tag team feuds and actually go up against like a tag team and then progress from that and then go up against Judgment Day. Because if Chad's going to be a solo star, then I would say you need to bring in another member into Alpha Academy. Maybe they could look to bring in Gable Steveson. I mean, Gable Steveson apparently is still around. He did get removed from the NXT roster, but then he worked a house show the other day. So I saw a lot of people going in on Dave Meltzer, which I didn't think was very fair, to be honest, because my understanding is, I think Dave said that Gable Steveson had been removed from the NXT roster. And my understanding is that is correct. He has been removed from the NXT roster. But so if he still works an NXT show, well, it doesn't change the fact that he was removed from the NXT roster. Like, the information is still correct. But he worked an NXT show, right? So it would seem that he's still around. So are the plans for him to now be moved to the main roster? Are they thinking that NXT is just not going to work? This crowd are just not going to take to him? Because there were allegations made against him, and court of public opinion seems to believe that he's guilty. So, and they made that quite clear in his last match, his only match. So they might be looking at it thinking, this crowd will just eat him alive. Maybe if he goes to the main roster and he's in front of different crowds every week, maybe like, you know, it'll be a bit easier on him, maybe. Which, if you're going to do that, I mean, if Chad's now going to go off and do like some single stuff, then you're going to need a new partner for Otis. And all of a sudden, Alpha Academy, which, you know, easily could become a faction, becomes a faction. You could make the argument it's a faction already because technically Maxine's in the group. But yeah, I sort of think that I wouldn't be against that. I wouldn't be against Chad's going off and doing like some single stuff, and then we bring in someone. It doesn't have to be Chad's. It could be anyone. Damon Kemp would be pretty cool. You could have Damon Kemp in that position. Damon Kemp and Otis. Or maybe I don't know if you'd want to bring up Gulak or Dempsey or one of those. But I feel like they probably do need to have some like wrestling skills. Like it needs to be one of those guys that really loves wrestling, because Alpha Academy is about learning how to wrestle and being the best wrestlers. You know, Otis is a powerhouse, but he can wrestle, he can go. And then Chad, as we've seen, fantastic. And they've been teaching. I mean, Duke Hudson. Could Duke Hudson leave Chase U? And could Duke Hudson join Alpha Academy on the main roster? That wouldn't be the worst. I wouldn't be down on Duke. I mean, Duke Hudson, I don't know what we're doing with him in NXT. He's been down in NXT for ages. And he's been nowhere near an NXT title. So, you know, do we just go, let's take Duke and put Duke in that position? So there's a few options for Chad, a few options for Alpha Academy. Big Time said WWE didn't get it right with the club in 2016. They tried with the OC in 2019. It didn't work. Third time, and so far, another flop run. I agree. I wonder why they keep spinning their wheels with Corbin. He's really underrated, said Hawkins Jr. Yeah, do you know what? That's another relaunch that just hasn't really worked. Do you remember the burn the ships and all of that? I mean, that felt quite promising, but it just hasn't landed because it just feels like more of the same. You know, we got that great video package. Burn the ships, I think, is a really good catchphrase, but we haven't had anything, have we? We haven't done anything. So with it, I think his ring gear, I like his Titantron. I think the entrance music sounds quite good. I'm not a fan of the ring gear, but it just seems like Corbin repackaged. I don't feel like this is his final form. It doesn't strike me as like, there it is. That's what we've been waiting for. Whereas some of the stuff down in NXT has felt that way. Some of the NXT stuff has felt like, there it is. That's what I've wanted. That's what I've been waiting for. So I agree. I think Corbin is someone that's really talented, really highly skilled, but is someone that just has never quite found the right gimmick that perfectly fits. I feel like we've got close with a few things. I really like Happy Corbin and like bum-ass Corbin, where he was down on his luck. Happy Corbin, I thought had potential, right? I didn't like him with Madcap Moss. I think Madcap Moss was an anchor for Happy Corbin, because all Madcap Moss was doing was just cracking horrible jokes and then they would find them funny. That is a joke that wore thin very quickly, right? Telling rubbish jokes and then them both laughing their heads off at it. Like I had to watch that week after week, segment after segment, and it got really tiring, really tiresome. I definitely was done with it. But, you know, him being down on his luck and on his fortune and then winning money in Vegas and then coming out in the Hawaiian shirts and, you know, he's got his hat on and everything. I think him having a bit of money about him as well, like that felt quite good. That I felt like, okay, it might not be perfect and Madcap being around didn't work for me, but there is definitely something here. There's definitely something that we can explore and do something with. This version of him now, which is like burn the ships. I don't know quite what it's standing for. I suppose in a way it feels a little bit like a callback to the Lone Wolf. I sort of feel like it's quite similar in tone to that. Lone Wolf was fine, but even Lone Wolf didn't quite fit perfectly. I mean, he was not ripping up trees when he was in NXT the first time. He kind of felt very similar to like a bit of a Von Wagner. You know, like how Von Wagner's never been NXT champ, never really been around the title. We don't really know what to do with him. We have tried something now with the going back in his history and his kid, like him being a kid and the struggles he had. But really, by and large, he hasn't really troubled any of the titles. He's been used fairly consistently. He's a name that people are aware of, but he hasn't really troubled any of the titles. That was Baron Corbin when he was down in NXT. He was around, didn't really trouble any of the titles. His gimmick didn't really feel like it fitted. You can tell he had a good size, and he had something about him. Like, he's not a disgrace or anything. He's got something about him. But yeah, it was a case that he got called up, and it was like, hopefully they can work this guy out, really make this click on the main roster, and they didn't really. It didn't. Then we just continued like struggling. So, and just year after year after year has gone by, and it just seems like that sort of malaise has been accepted until now, where he's gone down to NXT. We're trying to reinvent him, and we're really struggling to do it. We're really struggling to do it. So I think it's hard, to be honest, because I think if you can have a great idea for Baron Corbin, you could have a great idea for, like, 20 different people on the roster. But what about when they come to you for someone else and someone else and someone else and someone else and someone else? Fix this person, fix that person, fix this, fix that. You may just run out of ideas, to be honest. It might come to a point where you're like, oh, I think I've exhausted every idea I've ever had. And it could be that there are people in creative that are in that situation. They came in all fresh-faced, loads of ideas. 5 years down the line, they're just like, oh my God, I can't think of anything else. And like, they just can't figure out like what to do with Corbin. But I think they've got quite close at like getting something quite interesting a few times with him. Aaron, hello, shout out to you. Said Daze, I think that tomorrow Chad will say, I put my career on the line for the IC title, like Dolph Ziggler did against The Miz in 2016. It's a way for Gunther to accept. I really like that. I really like that, Aaron. Him putting his title on the line, his career on the line. That's really good. The only thing I would say is that if he does do that, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, I really like it, but are you making it a bit obvious as to what's going to happen? Now that Gunther has broke the records, if someone comes along and said, I'll put my career on the line, like straight away, I'm like, okay, well, that means they win then. But I like it because, do you know what I mean? Like, it would be a credible, it would show how much it means to Chad. It would show how much Chad believes that he can get that title, and he can, but he's willing to risk it all, kind of a thing. So I like it. The pros outweigh the cons, because to be perfectly truthful, whoever is going to be facing Gunther next, in my opinion, is winning it, right? Unless it's just like Akira Tozawa, and it's just like something to get us through an episode of Raw, and we know there's a bigger title defense at like the next pay-per-view, right? Then I would look at the next pay-per-view. But I think it's either his next defense or it's the next pay-per-view. I think the end is coming really, really soon. So maybe putting a career on the line would just add that little extra spice. So I like it, Aaron. I hope you're well, dudes. I hope you're excited for the week ahead. Sean said, perhaps the Creed brothers or Diamond Mine could come up to Alpha Academy, similar to players that dominate college football and they go to the NFL and they build themselves again. It's a new challenge for them. So the only thing I'd say is Creed brothers, there's two of them. I mean, if you put them in Alpha Academy, you've then got 4, which is okay. You can get away with that. But I always think if you've got 4 guys in a group, that means 2 are going to go for tag titles, Creeds. 1's going to go for the mid-card title, Otis. Does that mean that Chad is going to go for the world title? because that's sort of how if I look at a group, I want to know where's the world champ, where's the mid-card champ, where's the tag team. You know, it could be that like Damien's going to be the world champ. Dominic is going to be the NXT champ at the moment, and then JD and Finn could go on to become represent the tag titles. So like with Judgment Day, I can sort of look at it that way. Obviously with Bloodline, Roman was the guy. Usos were the tag team, and Solo had the NXT title. He was North American title for a very short time. I don't think anyone would have minded him being Intercontinental champ or United States champ. I think Solo definitely could have achieved that. So for me, I kind of look at that structure, if you will. If you put in a group together, who's going to be the leader, the guy that's going to go after the world title? Who's your mid-card guy? Who's your tag team? So in regards to Alpha Academy, if you put Creed Brothers in there, as we said, who's your tag team? Who's your world champ leader? Who's your mid-card champ? My gut feeling would be Creed's obviously tag champs, Otis mid-card champ, and then that would leave like Chad to go after a world title. That would be the leader that would like potentially go after a world title. I don't know that Chad's quite that level, but I think he is the leader of Alpha Academy. I think he's undeniably the leader. So does that mean that we're going to have to like put in the work to get him to that level? Otherwise, him and Otis might just always get in each other's way. You know what I mean? Like, you can't really have both of them going after a mid-card belt. Unless you have Chad go after the mid-card belt and then Otis just sort of feuds with someone away from the titles, and we don't really have any world champion star in there. But I don't know. I think if you've got a group of that size, you want someone that potentially is going to be hanging with some of the best in WWE. So for me, I'd definitely be looking for someone to go for that world title. I wonder if WWE are thinking that way, and like, you know, this is why we're really starting to get behind Chad as a single star. He's always had great potential. But I feel like it's way too early to be talking about him going after world titles. But to be honest, the more I'm talking about it, the more I'm actually visualizing it, and it doesn't look stupid. Like, do you know what I mean? I could see him winning a world title at, like, you know, a WrestleMania or something like that. Not Roman's, I'm talking about Seth's. Like, he is actually a name I've never considered for that belt. I have never considered him for that title, but it's not the stupidest thought. It's not the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But obviously, we got to take steps first. We need to get him, like, you know, to any title first. So yeah, as Aaron said earlier, maybe he'll go after a mid-cards title by putting his career on the line, and then have a good run, and we can look to build him from there. And in a few years' time, once we've really invested in him for a few years, maybe he is going to be knocking on that world title door. But when am I coming to so big? Q the Light Night, shout out to you. Big Time said, when they brought the Lone Wolf back to NXT, the entrance, the lighting, and the look, the NXT crowds loved it. We found something, then it's all been dropped. Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I feel like the live crowd are always going to pop to nostalgia. So, you know, he goes back, he does the Lone Wolf, you go, oh, I remember this. I remember when he used to do this. But I don't think that necessarily means that it's the right gimmick to take him forwards, because that's a gimmick he had and it didn't take him forwards. So, you know, nostalgia is a very powerful tool. And so to go back and give him his original music, and it kind of allows you to relive that time. You go, oh man, I remember this era. I remember this. This was when NXT was the best. And you kind of, you know, you got that nostalgia kind of vibe. That will run out eventually. That you're not going to sustain that for like years and years. And if he goes up to the main roster, people that don't watch NXT, they'll get that nostalgia hit. But again, it'll be diminishing returns. All of a sudden, it'll just become his music. That's what he is. That's his gimmick going forward. So I don't know. For me, I would struggle to say that was the long-term fix. You know, go back to Lone Wolf. People loved it. I think that you get a nostalgia pop and then it would have settled down. I think there definitely is something that you can do with Baron Corbin, but I just don't think we're anywhere near finding it at the moment. I don't think it's this burn the ships thing, unless they really drastically tweak it. But I've been watching WWE for a month, but Chad is slowly turning into one of my favorites, said Dominic the Writer. Yeah, he's really good. He's really good. Why would you want to talk that I could put a team together to run any platform, says Q the Light Knight. Brony said, if Cody goes to SmackDown, who would his first feud be with? Carrion, question mark? I can't think of many heels on SmackDown. Grayson Waller is occupied with LA Knight. Well, we can have a look, actually. I can quickly just bring up the SmackDown roster. And we can see as to who is on SmackDown. So, not AJ, not Dawkins, not Ashanti, not Bobby, not Butch, not Cameron Grimes. I mean, certainly he could get into something with Jimmy Solo as we get closer to next year's WrestleMania, but certainly wouldn't be doing that now. Carrion, as you've mentioned. Roman, Ridge, Boogs, Ray. Sheamus? I don't even know what's Sheamus? Is Sheamus a face or a heel at the moment? Sort of feel like his face, isn't he? Sheamus could be interesting. Sheamus will give you a hell of a fight. I mean, you know, you're gonna be chopped and tested, and it could be a really great match as well. So I wouldn't be down on Sheamus. I understand that he's probably face at the moment, but we've seen him kind of flirt in with a few different sides of his personality. But Carrion would be the one that would stand out. Yeah. So I'd be looking at Sheamus. I'd be looking at Carrion. Just wondering if you do something with like Hit Row, where you just put like Cody in a tag team for a short time. If like, you know, like how Dominic kind of gave him like a bit of bother and he had to deal with Dominic. Like maybe you do, because the roster is not that strong. Maybe you do have to just like have him faff around with Hit Row for a few weeks, you know? Or he has to faff around with maybe eventually Austin Theory or Grayson Waller. But yeah, there's not loads of options there. There's not loads of options. You wouldn't want it to be Solo or Jimmy yet, because, you know, if he's going to be feuding with Roman, I think you just save all of that for next year. Do you think John Cena should go after the Intercontinental Championship? When do you think Roman returns and the next title defense? Do I think he should go after the Intercontinental last show? I think am I right in saying that Cena's not won the Intercontinental? I don't believe he has won it. So, if it's a title that he needs, then yes, I think he should go for it. Because, you know, Becky's going after the NXT title, and I love it because it's a belt she's never won. So I am totally behind her going for that championship. Because when her career is done and she goes on Wikipedia and she looks at her list of achievements, she will be able to see that she ticked that box. And I think John wants to tick that box as well. So, yeah, I've got no problem with him going after it. I don't think he should be the one to beat Gunther, though. John comes and goes, doesn't he? Like, for him to be the one to beat Gunther, like, John's not going to be any bigger than he is now. And certainly he won't be bigger just for winning the IC title. So, you know, I'd say he's one of the worst options to beat Gunther. Because I think, like, you've got Jay, you've got Sammy, you've got Johnny Gargano, you've got Tommaso Ciampa, you've got, you know, Odyssey Jones, if you want to go that way. There's a whole list of people that would be bigger stars if they were to win that title and beat Gunther. You know, Sammy is interesting because he's, you know, main evented WrestleMania. He's already been Intercontinental Champion before, so you can definitely make the argument of like, well, how would he be a bigger star? But I think anyone that's going to be the one that beats Gunther, I think beating Gunther right now is one of the biggest achievements. Forget the Intercontinental title. right? Forget the fact Sammy's had that before. It's beating Gunther that's the achievement. It's being the one to do it. It's being that guy. It's a bit like Undertaker's streak, but just nowhere near as big. But if you can be the one that beats Gunther, like, that is definitely a feather in your cap. Definitely a feather in your cap. So I feel like, for Sammy, for Kevin, like, it would be significant for them. It'd be one of the biggest moments of the year for them. And obviously it'd be massive for an Odyssey Jones. It'd be massive for a Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, so on, so on, so on. So, yeah, I've got no problem with Cena going for that title. But as I said, I don't think he should be the one that beats Gunther for it. Whacked Out Wrestling Podcast said, truly Gunther's now holding the records. We'll touch all of our tra-la-la, our dingalings, our ding-dong-ding-dongs. Well said. That's what I was thinking. Would you agree it feels like Alba Fire and Isla Dawn's gimmick has already put a ceiling on the main roster? Immediate jobber status. No, I don't think it's their gimmick that's done that. I think, they just haven't been used. We just haven't seen them. They came up to the main roster. They lost those NXT women's titles and they've gone. So, we haven't seen anything. If I was seeing them every week and we were spinning our wheels and we tried a few things and it didn't work, or, then I'd feel a lot more confident in going, yeah, look, what else can we do? We've done that. I don't think we've done anything. I don't know how we can say their gimmick is holding them back when we ain't done nothing with them. We don't see them. We haven't done anything. So, they've got that kind of dark, kind of Ouija boards, calling the spirits. I suppose in a way it's a bit Valhalla-esque, right? We've got all that kind of like witches kind of stuff, right? You know how I feel about Supernatural. Definitely don't want it going that far, but I can operate in that grey area. I love being in that grey area. For me, that kind of Bray was in that grey area. Undertaker was in that grey area. I've got no problem with being in that grey area of, ooh, what's this? What's going on? It can be explained, but I like it. Mind games, what's blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, right? So I have no problem with us being in that space. And I think we can go in that space with them. I think they provide something a bit different. There's not really many people that are going to that kind of dark place. I think Scarlett and I think Valhalla, but really outside of that, there's not many that are going to that place. And really, Scarlett doesn't really get a chance to go there that often. We don't see Scarlett and Carrion all that often. So I'm looking at maybe like Valhalla, but Valhalla's doing more kind of Viking ritual, that kind of stuff. So I think there's things that we can do with those two. I feel like we've got to try some stuff and really get going. I suppose you could make the argument that because it's so similar to what Valhalla does, because I don't think it'd be a million miles away, it wouldn't feel incredibly different, that they are struggling to try and figure out, like, what can we do that's different? How can we present them different to how we present the Viking Raiders? My answer to that would be Viking Raiders are Viking rituals, bonfires outside, talking about the gods. I would go indoors. I would go spooky. I would go horror film. I would go in that direction. I think Viking rituals and horror films, I think you can get enough of a difference there. I think you can push them further enough away so that it doesn't feel like they're doing the exact same thing. Again, I'm thinking like you can really dig into like some horror film references, some horror film imagery. You can really like dig into that world. I suppose in a way, the kind of world that Bray was digging into. Bray was kind of venturing into that world, but we know that that's not a direction that we're going to go with Bray, obviously, because of his passing. I don't know what the plans are for Uncle Howdy. I don't know what the plans are for Alexa. We can't just not do that stuff now that Bray's passed away. We can't just not do horror film, scary stuff because Bray's passed away. He didn't have like the copyright on that. We can totally still do that. Again, you're going to run a bit of a risk of people going, oh, this feels just like Wish's version of Bray, right? You are going to run that risk. It means the execution is going to have to be bang on. I would say that their gimmick doesn't hold them back, but their gimmick is a challenge because it's very similar to a lot of other people on the roster, and it may also come across as a poor man's version of Bray and Alexa and, you know, some of the stuff that's come before. You need to make sure that you're very clear, you're very defined, and not only that, that you have really made it feel credible as well. I believe it can be done. I believe it can be done, but it would take some sitting down and some real working out, you know? The Viking Raiders is a dumb gimmick and it should be dropped, said Jim. Defcon Prime said, how is Lyra Valkyria okay, but Valhalla not, anyone? How is Lyra Valkyria okay, but Valhalla not? I don't know what this means. I don't know what you mean. I mean, Lyra Valkyria, I don't know what you mean. She's not doing a Viking gimmick. She wrestles all the time. She's involved in, like, she talks and has backstage conversations. We've seen her getting advice from people. She feels like a girl that's down to earth, that's got like not a Viking gimmick, isn't it? Isn't it like isn't it like a traditional sort of Irish sort of background, like Celtic? That might be the words I'm looking for. Kind of a Celtic gimmick kind of a thing, but I'm not seeing her like doing fires and summoning gods, putting on war paint and all that kind of stuff. I don't see them as having the same gimmick. I mean, I think you could make the argument that they are not a million miles away in regards to they I believe both have gods of some description. But I think the way, you know, one of them's more a manager and her promo style is she comes down to the ring barefoot. We don't get loads of communication or interaction with other wrestlers. It feels like Lyra Valkyria is a normal wrestler that has that as a slight kind of add-on, if you will, like a little quirk. She's a normal wrestler, normal promos, normal backstage interaction, in the changing room. She'll be there to help people out. She was giving advice to Kalani Jordan. She was having interactions with Rhea Ripley. She's a normal wrestler with a quirk, with a slight gimmick. Whereas Valhalla, she is someone that's not really wrestling every week. She's someone that's more a valet, more of a manager. And her gimmick, the gimmick of her being like some sort of Viking witch or whatever, that feels a lot heavier on her than it does on Lyra Valkyria. And as we said, I don't even think Lyra Valkyria is a witch. I think it's a different gimmick. I think she just leans into like mythology, into like Irish mythology. Whereas like we get a lot more like ritual and a lot more, dare I say, sacrifice. I remember them burning like New Day merch and like, you know, on a bonfire. Kind of feels like the gimmick weighs a lot heavier on Valhalla than it does with like Lyra Valkyria. Lyra just runs around in the woods with fake wings. Yeah, that I could have said that, to be honest. And do you know what? Thinking about it, that's how I should have worded it. That's how I should have worded it. She runs around in the woods with fake wings. Well said. Viking and horror films. I think you've just described Corbin and Cross as a tag team. Nailed it, said Hawkins Jr. Right, get in your final thoughts, because we're going to stick around probably for like 10 minutes. We have overrun. we have gone a little bit longer. I mean, I think we all knew that we would. If you haven't voted already, make sure that you get your votes in. We are up to 30 odd votes. So keep on voting. What I might do is share the link over on, I might put the link actually out on the channel to try and get that up a little bit more, because I want to take that data and do like a video on it. But yeah, we've had 30 odd responses, so feel free to click that link and make your multiple choice answers, and then I'll get that data and put it into a video. Bonkers said, where is Shelton and Cedric? Should they be down in NXT and not in catering? Well, yes. I mean, there's not really a reason for anyone to be in catering unless there's no story for them at that time. But the argument you can make about Shelton and Cedric is, when was the last story for them? Like, how long have they got to wait for a story? So, yes, I think if you don't have plans, serious plans to use them, then I think you really do need to get them out of catering and get them into NXT. In all fairness, that's what we did with Los Lotharios. So I'm interested to see how... I mean, we've been getting some video packages for them with their granddad, their grandpa. And I'm interested to see how they're going to look going forward. What's their theme music? What's their ring gear? We should be seeing them soon, because they nailed Tony D'Angelo and Stax last week. So I'm expecting to see them. I thought actually they might be on this week's show, but looks like we might have to wait a little longer. Maybe once we're done with like reinvented those guys, maybe then there could be some room for Shelton and Cedric. But I don't know, man. If I'm Shelton, I think I'm at the stage of my career where I'm just trying to get a paycheck, and that's it. I'm just trying to get a paycheck and move on, you know. Because it doesn't look like there's really... I'm not in anyone's thoughts. I'm not in any creative plans. I think I'm at the point in my career where I'm just trying to ride this for as long as possible. So I don't know. I don't know that there is going to be any big reinventions or anything like this. We actually might be close. It might be better for Cedric if he was to try and find a way forward of his own. Maybe someone like Cedric could join Alpha Academy. That would not be the worst. At least it would be getting him on TV every week. And if Chad's going to go off and do solo stuff, maybe a team of Cedric and Otis wouldn't be the worst idea. And maybe it's time for Shelton to just hang it up. If we genuinely don't have anything for Shelton and he's just sitting around collecting a paycheck, well, if you're happy to pay him to not do anything, brilliant. It's your money. But, you know, let's not hold Cedric back. Let's not hold Cedric back. Let's give him something else to do. Like, because if we are just not using Cedric because we're not using Shelton, that's a bit moody, isn't it? That's a bit moody. Do you think Pierce needs to run one show and have another GM on the other? Yes. I like having two GMs and then having that conflict, and I think that provides a really interesting... you know, that could create some stories. We've been down that road, and I don't know, there'll be plenty of people that are like, oh, I don't need to see all that again, you know. I don't need to see, like, Steph and Eric Bischoff stuff, or I don't need to see Steph and Shane, right? But I think that you don't have to do that. You can just have them getting along, you know. You can just have it where it's all fine. It doesn't have to be a conflict. But at some point, there could be a conflict, and then you could go down that road if you wanted to. Whereas if Adam Pearce is doing both, then you know you haven't got that as an option. So that's also it must stretch him to be, like, you know, attending both shows. I know he's not there every week and on both shows, but why not? Why not? Do you know what? I'd have no problem with Shelton running one of the shows. I'd have no problem with Shelton being announced as a GM. If he wants to be paid and still be a part of this, you know, maybe hang it up and become a GM. I think Shelton would be a very credible... I mean, he's 20 years with WWE. I know he wasn't with them all that time, but, you know, he's achieved a lot in wrestling. I think he's very highly regarded. I think a lot of people look up to him and respect him. He can talk as well. He's not a bad talker. He can talk. I think that little backstage segments, like putting matches together, doing basically what Adam Pearce does. I think Shelton Benjamin would be absolutely fine at that. And both of them are pretty nice guys as well. So again, if you don't want to do that like drama, then you could have them where they're just getting along. They could have their little disagreements, you know? They could have their little moments with each other, Adam Pearce and Shelton Benjamin, but I wouldn't hate that, to be honest. I wouldn't hate that. Do you know what? I feel like we're sorting some stuff out here, which I really like. We're sorting some stuff out. We know what we're doing with Shelton. We know what we're doing with Cedric. We know that we're having 2 GMs. Getting some stuff sorted. Serious Gaming said they could just reunite Hurt Business, Cedric and Shelton with MVP and Omos to replace Bobby. Supreme Ty said, I really hope that Tiffany retains. Well, we have got the poll running at the moment. We've had over 200 votes and it hasn't really moved. So it's 70-30 Becky for Tuesday. If you are just joining us and you've kind of missed the stream, we are going to look to do this every Sunday, and it's going to be for an hour. So we've gone a little bit longer today, but it was the first one, so I don't mind. And what we've done is we've spoke about what's coming up on Raw. We've spoke about what's coming up on NXT. We've spoke about what's coming up on SmackDown. We've touched a little bit on the news. We spoke about Riddle. We've also been getting the answers for the questions that have been set for a video that's coming up. We've been going through a few thoughts and theories, chucking a few ideas around. So as we said, you know, we'll look to do this on a weekly basis every Sunday. And as we said, you know, just chuck a few things around. Right. Shelton could be the GM that doesn't talk, just moves his eyes. Do you remember that gimmick where he was backstage and he just like sort of looked from side to side and we were trying to figure out what the hell was going on? And I don't think it ever got explained. Never got explained. I need Shelton to tell me at some point what the flip that was about. I need him to explain to me what this was about. It was just him backstage doing that, and that was it. And I think it only happened for like a week or two, a few years ago, and it never went anywhere. What about Riddle? Well, we spoke about Riddle. So Riddle is talking about sexual assault at JFK Airport. So he put a post up claiming that he had been sexually assaulted. And I believe it has since been deleted. And someone mentioned earlier that apparently he was also accused of being intoxicated. So it seems like there's a whole lot going on there. Chaos Theory said, what was this stream for? Well, hopefully you just heard me answer that, buds. Yeah, it's just a preview stream for the week that's coming up. So it's just going through the shows, talking about the latest news, asking a few questions, getting a few answers, and chucking a few theories around. We'll be done in a few minutes. We said we would go for an hour. We've gone a little bit over. So we are on the home stretch. Hawkins said it helps having 2 GMs for trades as well. We could see backroom trade negotiations. I like that. I'm down for that. Bonkers said Cedric and Wesley as a tag team. Hawkins said he would like to see GMs negotiate him. But William, shout out to you. Corbin and Cross against Viking Raiders could be interesting. Have those 2 teams as darker characters. I think we pretty much. I think we might be up to speed, and we might have caught up here with everything. When do you think Roman returns? And do you think John Cena should go after the Intercontinental? So we answered the Cena one. When does Roman return? I think there's a chance he stays away for a little bit now, only because Cena's around. So actually Cena can carry the weight of the ratings, which takes a bit of pressure off Roman. I think Roman does need to be defending that title, but he defended it at SummerSlam. Yes, we've had payback since, but we know that Roman doesn't defend that title as regular as we would want him to. So I think that we might not see him for a good few weeks. I think that he could just be leaning on the fact that Cena's around, and Cena, do you know what? Cena can get the ratings for SmackDown. So, Roman can have a little bit of time off. To be honest, I've said we're entering that time of year that's a bit of a problem. We're entering that time of year where there's no big shows. I know you got Saudi, but it's not really the same. It's not WrestleMania. It's not SummerSlam. Right? The Saudi shows, they feel quite big over in Saudi, and they stack the card, but I don't know, it's Saudi, innit? You can't escape the fact that it's Saudi. And those Saudi shows, they don't quite hit the same as a Royal Rumble, as a WrestleMania, as a SummerSlam. And then you've got Survivor Series, which has just felt small, to be honest. I mean, we do it in arenas. We don't do it in stadiums. Doesn't feel like we ever really build them up. I thought last year with the Bloodline, it was all right. It was all right. I'm not going to be down on it. I'm not a fan of War Games matches personally, but I thought that was probably as good as you could have done with having the Bloodline and Sammy and all of that. Well, you ain't got that this year. So what are you going to do this year? And are we even getting War Games at Survivor Series this year? That's the question. We might not even get War Games at Survivor Series. It might be that we do something completely different. Might go back to doing Raw and SmackDown, although I'm pretty sure Triple H made it clear that he didn't like doing that. And I'm pretty sure he said that last year, so I'm not expecting us to go in that direction. Wrestle with Andy said, when does the Crown Jewel deal end? It feels like it's been going for years. I think, isn't it 10 years? I think it's 10 years. And I think it's been running since about like 2018. So my guess is we've still got a good chunk of time to go. I think we've still got plenty of time to go, maybe 5 years or so. Survivor Series is still a big show to me. It's one of the OG pay-per-views, says Jim. Do you think Shinsuke will take the title off Rollins? I don't think so, but I would like him to. The reason why I say I don't think so is because I feel like their feud is continuing, but Shinsuke said no, didn't he? Apparently he said no because he wants to get matches on his time and all this. I just sort of feel like you built up that match and you built it really well. And Shinsuke said he knew about Seth's back, so he knew what to target, and he didn't get it done. So, I don't know, like a rematch, what can he do that's going to be any different? What's he going to do in a rematch that's going to get the job done? I am starting to just think that this is a feud for Seth to get past, to kill some time. It's a credible opponent, and we're just, maybe waiting for Gunther. Maybe Gunther will be the one. Perhaps Gunther, once he drops the title, he'll go up, get that belt off Seth, and then he'll be the one. The only problem with that is who's getting the belt off Gunther if Gunther becomes the world champion. Because I don't think we need Roman to have that belt on lockdown and then Gunther to have that belt on lockdown. But there is maybe a danger that we are just waiting for Gunther. Because if Shinsuke gets it, Shinsuke would then have to drop it to a face so that then Gunther could win it from a face. And I don't mind waiting for Gunther to get his hands on that title, because I do think once he's got it, I've got to think he's going to have it for a while. He's a good, credible champion. He's hard to beat, and why would he get the title and then lose it quite quickly? I just don't think he will. But do you think Rhea is dealing with an injury? A lot of fans have been critical over the lack of ring time since she's won the title. Don't think so. She's competing tomorrow. When did she last fight? I'm not aware of any injury, and the fact that she is fighting tomorrow. Look, if she loses the title tomorrow in a bit of a squash, then maybe. But, if she's going to end up winning tomorrow. Didn't she face Raquel recently? They had a match, didn't they? Not that long ago. This is the rematch. Was it Payback? I think, was it Payback they faced? So, unless there was an injury, no. Unless there was an injury sustained in that match, I think it's more of a creative reason as to why they haven't had a wrestling that often. Who do you think will take the title off Roman? Cody. Who do you think will take the title off Seth and Gunther? So I think Cody will take it off Roman. I think there's maybe a chance that Gunther takes the title off Seth. But I honestly don't mind it being someone else, because as I said, if Gunther gets it, how long is he going to have it for? And who's going to get it off Gunther? I think there's a chance it's Chad's. I mean, Chad has been the one that's been feuding, and I think we're at the point now where Gunther is ready to drop it now that he's broke the records. So Chad either gets one more shot, which we could find out tomorrow if he's going to, or someone new is just going to step up and come out of nowhere, like Johnny Gargano or someone like that. So, but I mean, there's no read on that. You know, that would just be someone out of nowhere. So at the moment, it feels like Chad's. For Seth, I would say feels like it could be Gunther if Gunther loses that title. And I feel pretty good about Cody being the one that gets it from Roman eventually. And on that, we are done. We could stick around and keep talking, but the plan was to do an hour and to be quite strict with doing an hour, and we have done that. A big thank you to everyone that joined us. Obviously, we'll make these a bit tighter, and we'll get them a bit more structured, but definitely looking to do these each week, as we never struggle for conversation. If anything, we could keep going, and there's always stuff to preview, and there's always news that's going on as well. So, you know, fill in an hour on a Sunday night, not a problem. So, yeah, appreciate the support. Appreciate people joining us. Hope you enjoyed this extra stream. Feel free to drop me an email or DM or anything if you've got any ideas for these extra streams, anything that you would like to see brought in. But I really like the questions thing. And, yeah, as we said, you know, click on the link, get answering those. I will put them out on the channel as well to get even more answers. Enjoy the rest of your weekends. I will see you all tomorrow for Raw. And as I said, have a great evening wherever you are. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.